okay, let's try this again. And so my computer like went offline, and then it stopped it on its own. So anyway, this is part two of my birth story. Um, so I was talking about how we have 3 steps off the front of our porch. I ended up falling off the last step. Oh, it was a mess. So then I was like yelling for Steven because I couldn't get off the ground by myself. Like I was so big I could not get off the ground. So, so I ended up yelling for Steven. He was on the phone, and it's like, you know, I think it was like 12:30 at night. And so Steven's like on the phone with his mom, trying to tell her we're headed to the hospital. And he thought, oh my God, she's having the baby in the lawn. So he ran outside, and he's like, what are you doing? And I was like, I was trying to carry this stuff out, you know. And he's like, you don't need to be carrying anything, just get in the car. So I carried, you know, what I could out to the car and got in, and he carried the rest, and got our suitcases and all that kind of stuff. So we drive to the hospital, and I mean, I landed in wood chips. So like my entire like under my knee, like my shin was just completely like scraped up, and it hurt so bad. And you know you're in trouble when you're complaining that your leg hurts worse than your contractions. Apparently, it's not moving along like it's supposed to be, you know. So we get to the hospital, and we go in and get registered because at our hospital they do not pre-register. And a nurse came down and got me in the wheelchair and took me up, and then they told me to go ahead and get into a gown or whatever. So I did that, and then they came in and checked me, and I had put a pad on before I left because I knew that my water had probably broke, and I didn't want that all over the car. So I put that on with a towel under me, and they used that to test for amniotic fluid. And when she came back in and said, you know, yes, your water has broken, I was like, oh my God, you know, because they said, well, you're going to get admitted, you're having your baby boy tonight. And I was like, oh my God, you know, you're just not ready for that when it's 4 weeks early. I was just not even there yet. So I ended up, you know, doing what I could at that point. And, well, funny story too, sitting at the desk, Stephen was talking to the RN nurse that was going to be taking care of me. And she came in and she was like, I feel like I already know you. And I was like, what? You know, it was kind of weird. And Stephen's thinking, I didn't tell her that much, you know. And she's like, oh my gosh, you know, I read your blog. And she had bought, like, I own my own stamp company, and she had bought from my company. And she's like, I follow your blog all the time and everything. I was like, oh my gosh, how ironic. And she was like, I always wondered if you would come to my hospital. But she ended up being my nurse. Her name's Jennifer, and she was awesome. Fantastic. I love her. Jennifer, if you're watching this, I just love you. You're wonderful. So it was wonderful to have somebody, you know, and she knows more about me than anybody else now. So, but they ended up taking me to my room and coming in and giving me my IV, which it still hurts sometimes. I hate IVs. They suck. They're awful. And then, like, I didn't, you know, I had that GB test done, and they hadn't gotten that test back yet to see if I had it. So I ended up just having to get the fluids anyway, the antibiotics, to make sure in case I did have it, then they would go ahead and, you know, treat me for it or whatever, so that it wouldn't hurt the baby. So I had that hooked up to me, and then like, I walked around the hallway for, you know, of course we called my mom, and apparently, like, she cleaned the house and did all kinds of stuff. And then we, you know, kind of got settled in, and Stephen went back home to take the dog out and to go ahead and get the rest of the stuff that we forgot, because we knew that we'd be there probably for quite a while. So then I started walking around the hallway trying to get things moving, and okay, it's still going. And it seemed like things were, were going or whatever, but she came back and checked me, and I was only like, they called it a dimple. Not even a centimeter, not even nothing. I mean, a dimple. I don't even know. So, and I think I was like, I want to say 80% effaced or something like that. So she called the doctor on call. Oh, of all things, my doctor was on vacation. So, I didn't even get my doctor, which sucked, but that's okay. You gotta do what you gotta do. I wish you could have been there, but oh well. So she called Dr. Grady that was on call, and um, he told him to start me on Pitocin, and I dreaded Pitocin. I'd heard such bad things about it, and those people were not kidding. So we got to the hospital at like, I think 1 a.m. I got started on Pitocin at 5 a.m. Um, and I would say I want to say at 7 a.m., I was 2 centimeters and screaming my head off. They could hear me screaming down the hallway. Um, the nurses could hear me screaming, and then they gave me, trying to help with the pain before the epidural, they gave me, I'm going to say Stadol. That stuff is awful. It just makes you feel dizzy and crazy and out of it. So I hated that. And then, as soon as that wore off in like 15 minutes, there I was screaming again. And I told Stephen, I was begging him. I said, please help me. Help me. I can't do this. And he was freaked out because I was in so much pain. I mean, I can't even describe it. You can't. It is really the worst pain ever. And I was like, help me. And then I started screaming, I want the epidural. I want it now. You need to go get the nurse. And I was only 2 centimeters, but that, the Pitocin really makes that pain awful. So, fine, like he walked down the hallway and the nurses had heard me screaming down the hallway and knew that I needed the epidural. So they called to get the epidural for me before this other girl, and she was a little bit more than me, but she wasn't on Pitocin. So, but, so he came in and gave me the epidural. That was the smallest little bee sting. It was nothing. It was the most wonderful thing. I ended up telling him that I loved him. I'm sure that he hears that from other women too. But, so I got the epidural, and then I was just pretty much out of it. And I was still in some pain, but it was a lot better. And I was in labor from then until, from like 1 a.m. until, like, until I had him. I was in labor for 22 hours. It was horrible. I pushed for an hour and a half, and I had the pushing pains. I wanted to push. I was doing the best I could. I was, pushing as hard as I could. But, after an hour, I was exhausted, but I just kept on going. So I guess I'll end this part 2 and then start my part 3 of my birth story. So, see you guys in a minute.